Hi, everybody. Welcome to another classroom with PCA Sim Racing. I'm Chris Pies, and I am here to talk about Oulton Park, which is the next track in our Season 15 PCA Sim Racing series. I think this represents about halfway through Season 15. We've had an exciting series so far, I think, and really good attendance amongst all of our different classes, from pro through challenge. And there's some really competitive battles out there. It looks like folks are having fun, and so this next set of races for the next 2 weeks, we're going to be heading over the pond and headed to England, and we're going to be racing at Oulton Park, specifically the international configuration. Oulton Park is one of the classic historical British tracks. You think of Oulton Park with Brands Hatch and Snetterton. They all kind of go together. They all have a very similar feel to them. It's kind of this old school kind of touring car type track. They're not very wide. They've got some interesting turns. They're not the track is just kind of this old school vibe and feel. One of the things I feel like on a lot of the English tracks, like Brands Hatch and Oulton Park, it's hard to pass, to say the least. While the track is a lot of fun to drive and it's very fun to hot lap, in terms of racing, it can be very difficult to not only get along someone but passing someone completely. It's relatively easy to defend on these types of tracks, and very difficult to pass, especially making a clean pass. Obviously, we're in GT3 cars with the 992 GT3R, and whenever the speeds of the cars get higher and higher, the more difficult it is to pass, because the time to make adjustments just gets smaller and smaller, and we're getting to the point where we're almost exceeding what this particular track really has to offer with the type of car that we're running on it. So very fast car, very classic British track, which can kind of lead to sometimes a parade, but we'll talk about it. So like always, we'll go through. I'm going to load up the replay that I did with a lap, and we'll talk through a detailed track walk of Oulton Park, and then we'll discuss kind of maybe some options of where passing can happen, or maybe some strategies to where you can move your way up the field. Like I said before I hit the record button. Oulton Park's got a lot of names, as you can see here on the screen, for a lot of its corners, and even straightaways have names for them. I'll do my best to try to refer to them by their names or their number, but I apologize if halfway through I start calling it just this turn or that turn. So I don't have a ton of time at Oulton Park, but I have done it a number of times. I really don't have a lot of time in a GT3 around here. So if there are other folks that are listening here on Discord, and you have some tips and tricks that I am not mentioning, feel free to go ahead and pipe up, and we can all kind of learn from each other in that sense. So let me go ahead and get the lap queued. What I'm going to do is, here in Discord, I am going to actually share my screen, so you actually get sound while I play the first kind of sample lap without me interrupting it. So what we'll do is start off right here, and this will be the lap of Oulton Park that we're going to discuss.
No sound.
You've got to click the watch button on my name in Discord, or watch stream.
Yeah, you got it. Thank you.
So there we are. Fun track, fast track, especially for how narrow it is. And it's got a lot of quirks, so we're gonna go through them and take them turn by turn. So I'm gonna go ahead and stop that streaming so you can see my pretty face again. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and take this turn by turn. Like I said, Oulton Park is an old school track, and it's got a lot of little quirks. One of the kind of main characteristics of this track is it seemingly has all this undulation throughout the track. None of the straights are flat. You know, there's a lot of blind corners where you have to kind of trust where the track's going to be. So we're going to try to use visuals wherever we can that keeps our eyes up. What we want to try to avoid is looking 10 feet in front of the bumper. We want to try to look way down the track, and we want to look for our brake zones, our apexes, and our track out points. When we can't see one of those 3 points, we want to find a marker out on the distance or up on the horizon that we can use to kind of help us guide us around the track. If we're constantly only looking 5, 10, 15 feet in front of the car, we're going to get surprised by corners, and we're going to get surprised by incidents that may happen on track. So eyes up. In general, this is just something that I need to reiterate more because it's probably the number one most important thing when racing is your vision. You're going to drive the car where your eyes are looking, and if your eyes are looking right in front of the car, you're going to drive to that point. So with that being said, coming into turn one here at Oulton Park, the straightaway down this front straight is not straight whatsoever. There's a little bit of a kink to the left. And so what we need to do is we need to make sure that by the time we go through that final corner, which we'll talk about at the end of the lap, we need to get the car into a position where we're on the left side of the track, opening up for this right-hander. This right-hander is probably one of the more simple corners on this track, to be frank. It's equivalent, or it feels like just kind of this straight 90-degree right-hander sweeper that you may call on some other tracks. What makes this corner tricky is the braking zone. There's no real brake marks that you can really use. You've got this entry road here, you've got the sign, but both of these are way too early to use as a brake zone. You don't have numbers or anywhere on either board. You've got some signage or some advertising signage over on the left that maybe you can use, but it's way over here outside of where you should be looking, which is over here on the right. So it's just difficult in general trying to get a good brake zone. What I've found in this particular car on this track is that if you look at the track, it goes at an angle here, and then it kind of tucks into the left just a little bit. There's a little bit of a curve right here. I'm braking just before this curve in the road. So my vision is right here, looking in front and looking at the apex. Because I can't really see the apex until it's too early, until I'm up on it and after I've turned in, I need to be looking for something or a marker here. And my marker is when this road kind of bends over to the left. My goal here is to brake, slow the car down, get it in a good spot, but also start tucking into the car, or start tucking into the corner. What feels a little early. It always feels like I'm turning in a little bit early into this corner. So what that looks like coming in here is braking at basically right at the little turn to the left. Keep the car a little bit straight once I hit the brakes, so follow the road to try to open it up as much as possible. And then when I can see with my vision the curbing here, I want to start tucking this car in. The temptation is to leave the car out too far for too late. And if you get out here where my cursor is, it's just too late to turn into the corner. You have to slow the car down so much to get the car to actually turn. So we want to kind of toss it in. If you can see the track, as we can see here, there's a lot of camber that's helping us. So what we want to do is we want to get this car tucked in, take advantage of that camber early on to get the car turned. As we start turning into the car, or turning into the corner, one of the characteristics of turn one is it's a very long trail brake corner. Normally what we do is we brake, tip the car in, and try to get off brakes pretty quickly. In this corner, I find that not only do we need to keep slowing down the car from when we initially hit the pedal, but we also need to start turning the car because it is such a long corner. And it takes a while for it to kind of start manifesting. So we need to keep a trail brake for a longer than usual amount of time leading into this corner. And then as we start to get that car tucked in more and more, we'll start releasing the brake, starting releasing the brake. Our goal is, and what we're looking for is 3 billboards in the distance. And that's going to be our apex point. So I'm actually going to go to the cockpit so we can see what that looks like. But we're looking for these 3 billboards that you can see here. So Drive the Dream and 2 BMW power boards. What we want to do is we want to apex this corner with our right side tires touching the curbing when the front end of our car is basically pointed at the 3rd board, as close to the 3rd board as we can. If we do that, we can start transitioning to power when we hit that apex, when we hit that curbing, and we can be confident that we can go to full throttle pretty darn quickly. So as we come through this corner, our vision on entry is we're looking for that little angle in the road. So where it starts to tuck over to the left, that's our brake point. Brake, turn in pretty much as soon as we brake, because we're going to trail brake and we're going to extend our braking zone through the first part of this corner. Trying to take advantage of that camber that we can see. And then our eyes are up looking through the corner, looking for the 3 boards, trying to get the front end of our board or of our car pointed at that 3rd board when we apex right here. And when we do that, we can start accelerating. And look at the camber here, right at the apex of the corner. There's a ton of camber helping us out. We can get on throttle really quick. We can actually see I'm almost full throttle through the apex point here. And I bet you, yeah, right as soon as I get to the apex point, I'm 100% full throttle. So I'm accelerating coming out of the corner. If we have the car pointed at that last board, we can be confident that as we unwind the wheel, we're going to end up in a good spot at the track out point. Now you may say, whoa, hold on a second. Why are you so far out? As long as we keep our right side tires on the curbing, we're going to be fine. And as long as we don't linger out here, we're okay. If we start getting the right side tires where any part of that right side tire starts going over the curb, we're going to get a 1X. Out of all the corners that are out here, though, this is the corner where a 1X can actually benefit you from a speed perspective. So you've got a lot of them in the race. If you come through this corner a little bit too hot, just open your hands, take the 1X, and keep your momentum. And you'll find that you'll still set a decent lap time. Don't try to fight the car because the car is bouncing around. It's doing a lot of things on the exit. If you lift off the gas abruptly and start making movement with the steering wheel, there's a chance that once you kind of go over this, clamber over this corner, you're going to end up getting the car unbalanced and it may hit a hole or something and end up spinning on the exit. You'll also notice that on the exit of this turn, we've got this like little lattice, grid in the grass. It's similar over on Brands Hatch, I think on turn 3. This is technically run out. So this would be like, it's obviously not quite paved track, but it behaves very similar to the track, so you don't lose time by dropping 2 wheels out here. And in fact, this is the fast way through here, which is putting your left side tires in this little lattice structure over here in the grass on the way through. As long as we get the car back on the road at the end of the curbing, we won't get a 1X. So I'll show you what it looks like from outside the car coming in here. So we're going to brake at the little kink, start trail braking it in, waiting, looking for the 3 boards, off the brakes, add power, 100% power, as soon as we get the front end pointed at that board and we're right at the apex point. Turn 1 is fast. Even in my practice earlier, I kept finding speed through turn 1. Nail it and you're going to get a really good run coming out of the corner and a really good start to the lap. Struggle with it and you're going to be losing tenths to the field. So really, really focus on getting a good turn 1.
4th or 3rd gear?
I am in, good question. I think I'm in 3rd gear through there. So I am grabbing 3rd right here. So I brake. So I'm in 5th gear here, brake on the way down, and then I grab 3rd right here on the way in. And then accelerate in 3rd, grab 4th when the car is straight, and get the rundown. So 3rd gear. All right, next corner is, let me use my little cheat sheet. So that's Old Hall Corner. We're going down the avenue. We're going through Denton's, which is this kind of blind right-hander, which is frankly kind of terrifying to be honest. In the car, you can't see past this hill. You can see a tiny, tiny little bit of the curbing here, but that's it. Everything else is blind. It doesn't help that we have a little sign here that shows left, which makes you think that the course is actually going to go left immediately after the fall. That's not the case. The course goes to the right first before it goes left. In general, the best practice, if you're not too familiar with this track, is drive the car and apex it where you see this little curbing here. And you will, on the back end, that's where the track is. And the track's not going to move. So after you do it a few times and you're comfortable with it, it should be no problem. And it's 100% flat in these cars. It doesn't take much thought, except for the first couple times you run this track. So if you don't have a lot of experience here, make sure you're apexing this corner like a regular apex, but it should be 100% flat. So apex the corner, what's going to happen on that backside, you're going to end up mid to right mid track going down into Cascades. Cascades is a tricky little corner. The gist of Cascades, or what we're trying to do, is we're trying to set up the corner as best we can, but it's a bit of a carousel. So we want to have a super, super late apex, but our goal is to get on throttle as early as we can to maintain that. So we want a good run coming out of Cascades. We don't want to be fast into Cascades if it's going to make us suffer on the exit of Cascades. The exit at Cascades is much more important than the entry. So entry can be a wide range of locations. You can be mid-track, heck, you can even be far left track. But at the end of the day, the point is to try to get the car in a really good spot on the outside of the entry to get us a good run coming out of Cascades. So as I'm coming into here, I'm trying to keep the car over to the right just to kind of open the left-hander as much as I can, but it's not absolutely crucial. But let's try to focus on getting it over here to the right. It shouldn't be difficult. I took that previous corner, Denton's, completely flat, and I was still able to get the car to the right. So there shouldn't be any reason why not to, unless there's traffic. We get the car over to the right, and then it is a pretty quick transition into a brake pedal, but it's not a hard brake pedal. It's braking to about like maybe 40%, just enough to kind of slow the car down and also set the nose, so get the weight on the nose of the car so it will turn in nicely. And then it's a bit, well, I say that, and then I'm looking at my telemetry, and I'm braking pretty darn hard actually right here. So we still need to get the car slowed down, but like I said, the entry is wide. We're trying to set up the exit. So we're sacrificing the beginning to get a good run coming out. I don't dive down to the curbing here quickly because this curve lasts forever. And so what I'm trying to do is delay my apex point. So what I'm going to do is take a really wide entry, keep the car out, and tuck it in. And then as I'm tucking the car in, that's when I'm going to accelerate coming out of the corner. You'll notice there's a lot of camber, like with turn one. This whole thing is banked. Now we are going downhill, so the initial turn it is pretty mushy. The car wants to understeer, but once we get to about where my cursor is, the first third of the corner, the front end will start to grab pretty good, and we need to use that to our advantage. So a nice wide entry. Our eyes are through the corner. We are looking so far down to the left as we can. I can't even show you on this particular screen, but we are looking way over to the left. And the goal here, like I said, is super late apex. If we look at this curbing here on the inside, we can actually use this to try to get us in a good spot. We've got these little rumbles here, these little polka dots, for lack of a better word, on the entry, and then it transitions to these little lines here, and then it goes back to the polka dots. What I'm trying to do is apex after the lines. So I'm trying to apex in the realm of these polka dots out here. So I still have an apex, Now I would start to classify as I'm apexing right around here. On this particular lap, I missed it a little bit, but the important thing is to carry that momentum. What we don't want to do is we don't want to be apexing here at these lines. If we apex anywhere in here, we're going to run out of road on the exit, or we're going to have to slow the car down to such an extent that we're going to lose a lot of time. So super late apex, think of it as coming off this hill. We're coming down the hill using the camber of the corner to help turn the car and getting on throttle to run down this hill and have a late apex. If we do it right, we'll end up here. We're getting on. I'll show you actually how early I'm getting on throttle. So it looks like right around here is when I'm getting on throttle. So the car, I've braked. I've started tucking the car in. The car is understeered on the entry, and then once I get through maybe the first third of the corner, the front end starts to take and it starts to come down into the corner. Once it starts to come down into the corner, I start feeding on the throttle to push the rear, to start transferring weight to the rear of the car, to push those rear Michelins into the tarmac, and to get a little bit more yaw and rotation in the car with that throttle through the differential, and then it'll take a set. And because we're basically getting into the camber and into the bowl at that point, we're coming off that hill, we're compressing into the tarmac. That's where we're getting the most amount of grip. The car is going to tuck in even tighter, but we've already started accelerating at that point, using it to our advantage. What's amazing about this corner on the exit of Cascades is that even though you're full throttle and you expect the front end to kind of start understeering out because you have full power, because of the camber and because we've transitioned from downhill back into uphill, and there's so much grip into in the car at this point through the physics of the track, the car will just keep that tight line, and we want to ride that tight line all the way through. On the exit, we just need to be careful because the run out is pretty tight here. Previous iterations of Oulton Park, if you barely put a wheel beyond the curbing, or dropped it in the grass here where my cursor is, you'd get a 1X. It seems to be more forgiving now, so you can actually put your right side tires in this grass and be totally fine. What you want to watch out for is if you run too wide out here, there is a slowdown. So if you do run wide because you apexed earlier, carried too much speed, and you decide, well, I'm just going to open my hands and carry the momentum and keep my speed, if you run too wide, like all four wheels over the curb, you will get a 1X, or you'll get a slowdown, a 1 second slowdown. So just be wary of that. If we do it right, we should be right around here. There's no real need to flirt with the grass too terribly much. I don't call this flirting with the grass, just kind of putting half my wheel out there. But this is kind of the fast line and the fast speed we want to be taking through that corner. Now we're rolling down what's called Lakeside, little mini straightaway, and it's leading to probably the fastest corner on the track, Island Bend. Island Bend is interesting in the sense that it really invites you to take it super fast, but you keep adding speed until all of a sudden you went too fast, and then you're in the grass and you're in a really bad spot. In general, you can get through Island Bend with just lifting and then getting back to throttle. You don't need to brake. The only time you may need a brake is on the first or second lap when you've got cold tires. So don't try to go through here on cold tires with significant speed, because you may find that you just understeer into the grass. And if you understeer into the grass, you're probably going to wreck in a tire wall. But we're not going to dwell on that. We're going to focus on getting a good line. So you can see right now I'm still flat. I'm in fifth gear. And then what I do is right after this dirt road and before the paved road, so in this little transition period, I'm going to get completely off the gas, kind of turn the wheel and tuck the car in, and then as soon as the car takes a set for the corner, I'm going to start rolling back on the gas to accelerate through the corner. I'm not coasting through the corner. I'm coasting early so I can get on the throttle to get the car set and then get on the throttle to accelerate out of the corner. So like I said, here I'm off, tuck in, and then start rolling back on the throttle. Left side tires can nibble the curbing. Just be careful that the curbing will end at some point, and if you drop your left side tires fully in the grass right here before it gets back to the pavement, you will get a 1X. So just beware of that. But in general, we want to apex it like a normal corner, get down here, touch the curbing, let the car run out. I'm in fifth gear. I'm flat out through here on the exit, opening my hands, to when we get to the Shell Oil corner. Okay, any questions between Old Hall, Cascades, or Island Bend before we tackle the hairpin at the end? Oh, you're a little quiet. Who was that? Oh, Johan. In Cascades, I should be in third gear, but let me just go back and check real quick. Yeah, third gear on the way through. So on the way entry, I'm in fourth gear coming down the hill. A little bit of a break. Get my downshift done right around here. And then accelerate out. And then coming into Island, super fast corner, full throttle. That full throttle through there as well settles the car. If we're not full throttle, or we keep our if we're kind of just babying the throttle on the way through Island, the car is going to be really floaty. If we get to full throttle early, we're planting that rear and you just get a lot of stability. Of course, it depends on what setup you're running, but I'm finding with my particular setup, with I think it's a 10.7 wing, so 2 clicks off max, getting to that full throttle was perfectly fine and gave me a lot of stability in the car going through Island. Now, when we come up to Shell Oil, basically my brake zone is when the car is straight. So as I've come through here, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to keep that angle in the steering wheel all the way through, and then it will move the car over towards the left side of the track. It's not absolutely required that you are on track left to go through the right-hander of Shell Oil. But if we can get over there, it's nice. It opens the corner up a little bit. But we're going to be slowing the car down so much, and the corner is so cambered that we could take this almost from anywhere other than far right side of the track. So once the car gets straight and I basically come out of the corner and I straighten my steering wheel, boom, that's when I'm on the brakes. So, I mean, that's pretty much what it looks like. So you can see here, full throttle, full throttle, full throttle, straighten my hands, boom, 100% brake. I mean, we are in ABS, right on ABS. We got to slow this car down as hard as we possibly can. So this is threshold braking defined. The goal with this Shell Oil corner, there's lots of lines through here. We could brake, keep it down the inside, treat it like a carousel, and just travel along the curbing all the way around if we want to do that. We could brake in a diagonal line into a first apex here, let the car run up the hill, rotate the car midway through, and then tuck it in, and then hit a second apex and accelerate out of the corner, and a million ways in between, frankly. I try personally to keep it nice and tight on the inside. It protects the inside from attack, and it's the shortest distance traveled. The key is we need to have a car in a certain place on the exit. So as you can see, I've tucked it in tight on this particular lap. I think I drift. Oh no, I don't drift up too much. But what we're trying to do is we're trying to get the car to exit as we unwind our hands and we get on full throttle in second gear. We're trying to get the car around the end of the curbing. So the closer we can get down here towards the grass, we'll be in an okay spot on the exit while we open our hands to allow the car to accept the second gear acceleration. If we are apexing back here and we get on the throttle here and we have the car tucks in and touches here and we mash the throttle and start opening our hands, we're going to run out of track. And we're going to have to get out of the throttle, and it's just going to be a mess. So we really want to focus on trying to get the car to do its final apex around the exit, or around the end of the curbing. The one thing I will say is that on our entry into this corner, it's just a huge compression zone. There's so much grip on entry. We are going to be going uphill, and it's on camber. However, about halfway through the corner, we're now headed uphill. And the track is actually going to stop going uphill. And the track is the camber is going to slowly disappear. So as we're exiting the corner, the grip that was there on the entry is going to be going away. And so if we keep thinking that there's going to be a ton of grip and keep driving that hard, we're going to end up in probably an oversteer situation when we get on throttle, and the back end of the car is going to start to try to wiggle and shake. So just make sure that when you finally commit to that final throttle or full throttle, you're actively opening your hands. You're not keeping them really tight like you were earlier in the corner. So my final apex point is right here. You can see how close it is to the grass. Pretty darn close. So trying to get it down here by the grass is always just good practice in general. It's safer that way because you're going to be able to open your hands and have the car in control. As we open our hands with second gear, we can let the car run. We don't want to really get up on this curb because if we do get our left side tires up on this curb, it completely flattens out. And if we have too much steering when we do that, we run the risk of getting an oversteer situation and spinning the car. Getting a good run coming out of here, we're going to come to our first of the two chicanes, which are just... The chicanes here are unique. We got tire walls. The tires do not give. Do not touch the tires. They will destroy your car. Even if you barely brush them, if you brush them wrong, it can hit your tire. The tire can hit your tire and break your suspension. And you may seemingly say, I didn't touch that. But when you look at the replay, you may barely have touched it. And just barely a touch will end your race like that. So we need to give some deference to these tires through these two sets of chicanes. It's an hour-long race. In qualifying, attack. The closer you can cut it and not touch them, the faster your lap time is going to be, like a street circuit, like Long Beach that we were just at. During an hour-long race, it's a risk. It's how much risk you're willing to take. If you have a lot of practice in here and you feel really confident going through the tires, you can probably cut them pretty tight. If you struggle getting through there consistently, leave them some room. Leave them half a tire width or something. It's not worth wrecking your car on lap 15 in a 40-lap race because you're trying to eke out 500ths going through one of the chicanes. So just keep a mind on what's going on in the race. Are you chasing somebody down? Where you are? What's the goal of the race for you? And that will dictate your risk appetite going through these chicanes. But let's say we're trying to go quick and we're trying to get that pole lap. So we're going to take it pretty darn fast. So in general, what we're trying to do is we're trying to open up the last part of the chicanes on both chicanes. So in the right-hander is the last part of the chicane. So what we want to do is we want to open up that corner. And the best way to open up that corner is have a super, super late apex on both of the chicanes. The temptation here is to drive from point to point and like most chicanes on most tracks and just drive a straight line between them and then turn. If you do that, you will have to slow the car so much at the second chicane because it is a corner. And it leads onto a big long straightaway. So we want to sacrifice the first one so we can get a run coming through the second one. So as we enter into this chicane complex, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to draw around this first one to the left to open up and get a super late apex on the second one. So it's late apex, but the goal is to get on throttle as soon as possible coming out of the chicane. So my entry point coming into here, what I am looking for is I am looking for this curbing. I'm going to jump the curbing, and then I am trying to get the car to what feels like apexing behind the tire wall. And then it's the same thing on the other one. I'm not actually apexing that far late, I don't think, but that's the thought in my head. So we keep the car over to the right. We're trying to open up this left-hander as best as we can. One of the risks and one of the things you got to just remember is that you get really close to this grass if you try to take this line. And if you dunk a tire in the grass and hit the brakes at the same time, you're going to lose control. So just make sure that you are on the tarmac and you're not cheating too much and getting your right side tires in this grass. But you can see I'm using 100% of the track. I am starting my brake. I'm going to brake in a straight line and then trail it off around the corner. I'm in second gear through here. So there we are.
Feeling the fountain at Long Beach again.
Fountain at Long. I mean, that's kind of the idea. It's just it's not as long, right? It's a mini fountain. So we want to apex around the corner. So we're already starting to turn. You can see if I was trying to take it like a traditional apex, I would be in a straight line, but I'm not. I'm going to turn this way and then turn this way. So super late apex. The car will bump. As soon as it lands, I need to transition to the right side. So I've got a little bit of brake to keep the nose engaged with the track, but I've already started my turn at this point now that I've hopped the curb for the last set of tires. And then this is the one that matters. The first one doesn't. So we take the first one pretty darn quick, jump it, brake, get a transition, start turning it, and super late apex. We have to wait. We can't get on throttle too early because there's just not enough room. So we're waiting. We usually don't get to throttle until after the tires themselves. So we've turned. There we go. Coming out of the corner, apex close to the tires. We're apexing on the back end. I've started adding throttle in second gear. We're going to be going uphill. The car is going to get, as it goes over that curb, it's going to get a little bit more turn. We want to use that. And then when it lands on the back side, we should be opening our hands pretty darn quickly. If we do it right, the car is going to end up all the way on the left side with this curbing, but that's fine. We want it to end up there because we can take this left-hander up the hill completely flat in second gear. So we're using all the track and we're using all our momentum to go through the chicane. So let me back that up and show what it looks like without me starting and stopping. So we're coming up in here, brake. We're going to get off the brake as we jump, back on the brakes, transition, late apex, off the brakes, accelerate, up the hill to get a good run coming out of the corner. It's fast. It's brutal. But once you start getting the rhythm, you kind of wonder how in the world did you take it any other way. All right, now we're coming up to the second chicane. Different than the first chicane. The first chicane is really, really tight. I mean, it's turn. The second chicane is much longer in terms of there's more distance between the two apexes, the two tire walls. But the concept is still the same thing. We want to take a super late apex around both corners, and we want to set up that last corner for a wide entry to get a good run coming out of the corner. So the break point that I was finding pretty successful is about 100. The 100 board here on the left. And what we're going to do is we're going to try to apex this first tire wall behind it. That's the feeling. I've experimented with both second and first gear through here. I think I like second more just because it helps me keep momentum up. But first gear is also seems to work as well, especially if you need help slowing the car down and you carry too much speed. Going down to first gear can help force you to go slower. But first or second, it's kind of a 6 and 1/2 dozen of the other. Pick what you're most comfortable with. Super late turn in. I mean, I am turning in pretty much at this road is where I'm actually starting my initial turn in. Lots of braking, and I'm apexing around the corner. So you can see my apex point is on the back half of this curbing. Not up here, way back here. Because the goal is to get the car to the right all the way to get a good run coming to the left. A similar thought would be Monza turn 1. Monza turn 1, you can cut the first chicane. So imagine if there was a big wall right there at the apex of Monza 1 and you need to get around that wall. You set up the second part of that chicane is the important one. We're doing the same thing here. So we're going to get that car. We're not going to go past mid-track. And we're going to get a late apex coming through here. Super late apex. You can see how late. I don't apex until after the tire wall. But the only way we can get to this position right here is we have to sacrifice this first corner and keep the car over to the right as best we can. The other thing I will say about the chicane on this particular characteristics, the first turn is off camber. So you can actually see the road is angled away from us. So the car is trying to understeer through here. So we really have to slow the car down pretty significantly to get it around. So my speed is, min speed's about 56 miles an hour through here. It's pretty slow, all things considered. But then look at the second one. The second corner is on camber. So we actually have a lot more grip coming through the second one. So we can carry more speed coming through. And in fact, I actually start speeding up right around here. As I hit the apex point, I'm in the middle of the bowl. I've got max camber, and it's going to help shoot me out of this corner in second gear. So I get to throttle pretty darn quick. Through there, I keep my hands, I keep my steering angle on the way through. The car will move to about mid-track, and then it will move over to the left side of the track, and then I will turn the other way. The goal is to get the car all the way on the left side of the track, and then once we do that, it's going to be a little bit of a brake, hesitation, wait for the apex on the right, on the next corner. This right-hander, I would say, catches a lot of folks out because they carry too much speed through it. You just came through a really slow section. You've got a little bit of a squirt of speed. You want to go. I'm ready to go, ready to go, ready to go. But if you carry too much speed, you're going to just run wide every single time. So it takes a lot of discipline to get the car all the way over to the left, a little bit of brake, a little bit of patience to get the car set up right so you can get a good run coming out of this right-hander. And this right-hander is called Knickerbrook. So we get the car all the way over, or maybe not all the way over, but pretty close. Get a little bit of a tuck in to the right side, and then I'm on this particular lap, I'm waiting. Like I want to go to throttle, but I know as soon as I go to throttle, the car is going to understeer and I'm going to run wide. I have to be patient, and I can't really brake to scrub speed either because I'm trying to get the car to turn its maximum ability. So super late apex as well through here. We want to get up on the curb. We don't want to hop the curb in the sense that we don't want to put our right side tires right of the curb. We want to touch the curb and get a good, and use all of the curbing to kind of extend the corner through here.
So Chris, you're not braking there, you're just lifting.
Do I?
Right.
Let's see here. No, I got just a touch of brake. So coming through here, I am braking right there. There's a tiny bit of brake. So as I'm transitioning from going to the left and transitioning to the right, I have just a tap of brake. And that tap of brake is me a little bit. It's just habit for me. I'm trying to set the nose. I'm putting weight on the front tires. So when I turn to do the transition, the front tires are biting because they've got some extra weight on them. If I just lift, the front end of the car won't turn as nicely because there's not as much weight on them. So just a little bit of a tap of a brake pedal. It doesn't have to be much. In this particular case, I went to maybe 25% brake as I made that transition with my hands. And that's enough to get the front end to kind of take more of a pointiness to start getting it towards the corner. But then after I tap that brake, I mean, this is like coasting maintenance throttle, waiting for the corner to come. You just have to be super patient on the entry into Knickerbrook, or else you'll run wide. Second gear going through there. As we go over and clamber over the curb, this corner is off camber. I mean, everything is kind of forcing us out into the gravel. Track is trying to throw us off at this point. So we just have to be really, really careful and really, really smooth on our application to throttle. And also our hands need to be super quiet on the way through there. The car is doing everything it can to kind of hang on. We just can't give it really abrupt movements with the pedals or the wheel to upset that. Late apex, you can actually see where how the curb kind of does this weird little tight corner down here. We want to be apexing like at or past that. So you can see my apex point is just a little bit past the little tight kink at the end, and that helps give me a run coming down the straight. I had heard someone say something. Yes, Johan, you're a little quiet, but go ahead.
I see you're taking the curb there. When I take the curb there, it unsettles the car quite a bit.
Yes, and it can. But what you be very, very mindful is how much curb are you taking? Are you putting your right side tires in the grass? Because if you put your right side tires over here, it's going to bump the car up, like jump it, and you're going to get on two wheels. If you keep your right side tires on the curb and don't get over it, you'll get a little bit of a bump, but you're not going to get that two wheels in the air kind of circus. So just keep an eye on that. If I throw it through here without me starting and stopping, you can see how much the car bounces from me touching the curb. So just a little bounce right there, boom, and then right back down. You're good to go. On the exit here, you can drop your left side tires over the curb and not get a 1X. However, it is usually if you're dropping 2 tires over here, your car is already starting to go pretty good. And you'll end up getting into the grass and be slow. So I try to keep it clean coming through here and don't go over the curb. If I do that, that means I got a good angle coming out of the corner. If I'm clambering over this curb and getting my left side tires in the dirt, I'm kind of ragged edge, and I messed up earlier in the corner. So second gear through there. This is a very important corner because it leads to one of the larger straightaways on the track, frankly. And so we really need to get Knickerbrook right to get a good run coming up the hill. And when we talk about passing a little bit later, I'll explain why it's so important, because Druid's Corner, which is the next corner, is one of the few places on the track that you can reliably make a pass on. So get a good run. We're going to start going up the hill. This is another blind area. What I do is I tend to just use my curbings as my guide. So all of the candy stripe curbings are apex points basically. So as I'm going up the hill, I will put my left side tires right here at the curbing. I know it's a gentle over the hill, so there's no need to manhandle the wheel. It's flat. You just can't see where the road's going to go, so you just have to know that it's there. But apex at the candy stripe right here. Boom. Car will go over the hill just nice and gentle with the steering wheel. We want to minimize our steering inputs because the straighter we hold the wheel, the faster the car goes. The more steering we have in the wheel, the more scrub we have, the more friction we're putting in the tires, and the slower the rate of acceleration. So keep that steering wheel as straight as possible while still, obviously staying on track. Coming around here, around Water Tower is what this is called. We want to get this car set up in a good spot. So we want to get this apex on this candy stripe curbing to try to get the car as far left as we can to set up for Druids. So don't just turn your mind off, end up touching this curb and end up going straight here, because then you're in a terrible spot if you're on the right side of the track for Druids. So we still need to keep the car over to the left. So we'll follow the track, end up here, and then basically as soon as we go through this little left-hander, we come over a hill, as soon as the car kind of compresses is where I start to take my my brake here. Druids is what I would call a field corner. It's a double apex, car is completely on edge, and you're kind of just four-wheeled. If you're doing it right, you're four-wheel drifting through the corner. That's the fast way to take it. Even if you miss the first apex, the second apex is totally important. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to apex the first corner, let the car kind of drift about mid-track, halfway through the corner, and then tuck it in and do a late apex on the second corner. It's we have a little bit of a brake pedal, so we have maybe like a 7 pedal on the entry, and then immediately we start tucking the car in. So we have to start coming off that brake and start trailing into the first corner. So we can't do threshold braking. We can't stand on the brakes. It's more important for Druids is keep the balance of the car. We don't want to be standing on its nose. So keep the balance of the car. That'll allow you to take more speed on the entry and keep the 4 tires underneath you. So we tuck it in, start turning it, and start tucking it in, start turning this wheel with a little bit of brake pedal. Our first apex is this candy stripe curbing. So what we're going to do is we're going to just kind of clip that through. And as we clip it through, what's going to happen is the track's going to fall away from us. It's going to be off camber, and the car is going to kind of just slide through the first part of Druids. Eventually, it will catch on the back end about halfway between the 2 apexes. It'll catch in, the car will turn, and then as it turns and as it starts to kind of rotate, that's when we're going to start to add throttle to settle that rear, to stop that rotation, to get a good shot out the second part of the corner. So a little bit of drift on the way in. So I've started my slip angle. You can actually see it in the car. The car is actually starting to slip at this point. I don't have much brake or anything from a pedal wise in the car because I'm just going to ride that drift through. As I go through the first corner, I'm going to start picking up throttle right here. And then at this point, the car is going to get from that negative camber situation to a positive camber, and it's going to start to transition into an uphill or the track is. And so we're going to start compressing into the road, and we're going to start having more and more grip. As that grip comes in, we're going to start adding throttle because we're getting more grip. So as you can see, I've already actually completely hammered the throttle. So I'm actually accelerating at this point on the way through. Here's our second apex point. We want a late apex through here. So you have the curb, and then where it has its maximum angle for the corner, that's where we want to have our second apex at the corner.
But you did drop 2 gears going in.
I did. I'm in third gear through here. So the gear drop is on the entry during the little brake zone. So fifth gear. So right here, brake, downshift, off the brake, drift, start adding throttle to catch it. Second apex right there on the way out. As you exit Druids, it's very, very tempting to kind of just like open your hands because you can't see over the hill. And a lot of times, and sometimes it used to catch me out all the time when I ran Oulton a lot, the track keeps turning. And so you come over the hill, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, curbing and grass. I am running out of track, and there's nothing you can do about it at that point. The key thing to kind of remember is a later apex through the back part of Druids right here, and then trying to pretend like you are tracking out to mid, like 2/3 track, so just past mid track, rather than driving the car all the way out here to what you can see. Driving the car to about here will save you when you go over the hill from running out of track on the back side of the hill. So if we actually go into the cockpit, you can see what I mean. Like as we're coming through this hill or coming through this corner, there's our apex. It looks like the track is just going to kind of go over, and here's the bridge, and we can kind of just go straight, right? But what we don't realize is as we crest, oh shit, there's the curve in the grass. It goes to the right before it goes to the left. And so we just need to be aware that we need to leave a little bit of chicken on that bone on the exit because the track is still turning as we crest that hill. There we go. If we do it right, we're going to have our left side tires on the rumble, get a good run coming through the corner. Nailing Druids. Druids is one of my favorite corners, I think, in all of iRacing. It depends on the car. It's not as fun in these aero cars. But if you're like in a Miata or something that has no aero, a Skip Barber especially, that likes to like have slip angle, the slip angle you have going through that corner is just fabulous. It just feels like you're formula drifting through there. It's so much fun. And so get comfortable with that slip angle through that corner. Don't be scared of it. And if you do, that's the fast way through. All right, we got a nice, the key thing about Druids, it's a fast corner. And if we take it fast, we get a good fast exit, and we got a little straightaway leading up to Lodge, which is the final corner on the track. Lodge is tricky in the sense that it's tighter than you think. It's like a decreasing radius corner. It's very, very tempting on the entry to turn in too early. And if you turn in too early, you're going to run out of track on the back end. The exit is a lot like Druid's exit, where the track just keeps turning and you want to track out. And if you track out like a traditional corner, you are going to run into the grass. So what we need to do is we need to have an exceptionally late apex here to make sure that when we get on throttle, we are so late on the apex that we have plenty of room on the exit because we've got a good angle coming out. As far as brake zones, what I like to do is I've got this little sign here that tells me there's a brake zone coming. From the cockpit, you can see it a little better, but you can't hear. But the track actually kind of feels like it goes down and then it goes up. And then as it crests onto this tabletop, which is about right here where my cursor is, that's my brake zone. So if I go into the cockpit, you can see it actually a little bit better. So you can see it's going to go down and then kind of go up. In fact, if I go to front, oh, I thought there was a splitter bumper, right? Bump. I thought I saw it. Never mind. I don't know. Oh, no, it's right here. Okay, there you go. You can see it here. So it kind of goes down and then it goes up, and then there's like this tabletop. That's my brake zone. So we're going down into it, up, and then we're going to brake right as we're approaching the top of the hill. The earlier you brake on this hill, the more braking force you have, but it's a little deceptive because if you brake too early, you're going to be really slow on entry. You're going to be like, oh, I broke way too early. And the temptation is going to be to brake later. Well, in reality, what it is this hill that's helping you slow the car down. And so you may think, oh, I can brake later. And then all of a sudden you're braking past the tabletop and you can't slow the car down. So we're talking feet of difference between braking way too early and braking way too late. So you just have to really be precise on where you want to start slowing the car down. But I was finding in these conditions pretty much right before the crest was a really good spot. It's a pretty heavy brake, so it's almost threshold braking on the way up. Know that after you hit your brakes, the car is kind of going over a crest and it's going to start to kind of go downhill a little bit, so your braking force is going to dissipate. Thankfully, we have ABS, so we don't have to really worry about locking up. But in a car like the Cup car has ABS now too. Old Cup car, coming up over this curb, it was really easy to, after the initial brake, if you thunderfooted it and you just kept your foot in the brake with that same amount of force, a lot of times you would lock the brakes up on the coming up into the corner because the track fell away from you and you lost your grip. But that's not the case anymore. What we're going to do is we're going to take a super wide entry into this corner, and our apex point is basically where the curb and the grass meet on the back side of the corner. So what we're looking is eyes are up, we're looking at the curbing all the way over here, and what we're looking for is where the curbing and the grass meet, way down here. That's where we want this car to drive through. So second gear, and it's patience. The temptation is we've got tons of camber, we're going to turn in, and then we're going to accelerate up the hill. But if we jump on the brakes and we apex somewhere right around here, we're going to 100% run out of track on the exit. So we have to have a super late apex right here, right where the grass and the curb meet, which is kind of unbelievable. And then once you get to that point, your eyes are down here. You can't really see anything, but you just have to trust that as you open your hands, the track will be there on the backside of the hill. The car, as you crest over this hill, is going to want to oversteer because the grip is disappearing. Just be ready to do a little bit of counter steering. The worst thing you can do here at this point, as you crest this hill, is jump off the accelerator, like completely release it and start turning. So like if you're angled over here towards the left, towards these tires, and you're like, oh, I'm going to run out of track. If you jump off that gas and you turn the wheel, you are 100% going to spin. Because what you're doing is you're taking the car, all the weight is on the rear of the car. When you get off the gas, you are unbalancing the rear of the car. So you are taking that weight off the rear of the car. You're taking the grip away from the rear tires. And then you're also turning the car. It's going to cause the rear end to have no grip. And as you crest this hill, and you're going to spin every time. So if you find yourself in trouble, if you have to come out of the gas, come out super ginger. Try to keep some power in the car, but don't just jump off it like it's a hot potato or something. If we apex there, the car usually ends up all the way over here on the track. We're opening our hands to catch any oversteer that might happen, and we're still using 100% of the track with that late apex. So anything earlier than that, where that curbing and that grass touch, tends to end up having a car over here in the grass because you run out of room. Coming down the front straight, it's a curve. You've got to make sure you pay attention to the curve. Just apex it where you can see it, but it's flat. The course turns to the left before tucking down into turn one again. All right, any questions about the line or the general idea behind Oulton Park? Any corners you want me to revisit?
Passing zones.
Passing zones, yes. All right, so let's talk about passing zones. There's not many, so we'll go through real quick with the car driving. Turn one can be a passing zone. There's a surprising amount of grip over here on the right side of the track, and if you can get alongside someone and take away the inside car is going to have a tremendous advantage from the outside car. But that requires you getting up alongside the other car into the braking zone before the turn in point. The problem with turn one is that in the rules that we've got in PCA, you've got to establish that position before the turn in point. Well, you can turn in here basically as you brake. The idea behind turn one, right, is you brake and you're trail braking in. So you're turning in like right here. So if you try to out brake someone and they turn in here and you hit them, you didn't have position before they turned in. So it makes it very difficult to effectively get position without actually being alongside them for the braking zone. You get alongside them, easy. That makes the corner easy. If you're not quite alongside them and you're lagging back behind and you're just like, I'm going to outbrake them going into turn one. If you don't and they turn down and you guys make contact, the trailing car will be held accountable 100%. So just be aware. But it can be done. Turn one is one of the better passing zones, but it's so fast. And know that if you do go too wide through turn one, both cars will be so slow compared to the field. You're going to lose probably half a second to the field just through this turn if you take it too wide. So just be aware. Be prepared for that. Coming through turn one, leading on down into... Where's my track map? Leading down into Dentons and Cascades. If you're brave, it depends on the run through turn one. If you can get alongside your competitor going down Dentons and into Cascades, you can make a pass into Cascades work, especially if you're the inside car. I would really caution against trying to pass someone around the outside. And the reason is because all cars at the end of Cascades end up on the right side of the track. You can't, it's almost impossible to pinch Cascades exit off to the left side. So if you have two cars too wide right here and one car is going around the outside, I can almost guarantee always the inside car is going to end up here, even if they don't want to, even if they want to leave room. Everything understeers and forces the cars out to the right. And so the outside car really runs the risk of getting doored and pushed out into the grass. And it's not that the inside car is being nefarious. It's just, it's so hard to keep the car tight on the exit of Cascades. So really caution about trying to pass along the outside here. If you're going to pass into Cascades, make sure you're the inside car. You can do it, especially if you get a good run coming through turn one. And you come up alongside someone and you've got this little tiny kink where Denton's is. All you do is, as you come through here, let the car run long. So you just straight line this. You're going to have to brake, and you're just banking on the fact they're going to brake sooner and you're going to brake harder or later and really slow the entry and basically take away the position. But it can be done. Coming out of Cascades and going down into Island Bend, you'll never be able to get alongside someone coming through Cascades unless they totally mess it up. So Island Bend is too wide. Or not too wide. It's single file through here. It's so fast. There's just no room. You're all the way on the right side of the track. The car is 100% on edge, and you're going to use all the track on exit. There's just no real way to get alongside someone through here because there's no braking zone on the entry. This is another potential and probably the best passing zone, or the second best passing zone, is going into Shell Oil. The problem is the risk reward. The risk is so high. The temptation here is, as you go through Cascade or through Island, you want to get on throttle sooner, hold it longer, and whip around the outside and take away the inside for Shell Oil. The risk you run is if you go too wide and you drop a tire in the dirt on the way on through the exit of the corner, is if you drop any tires out here, you're dead. 100% dead. You are along for the ride. Best case scenario, you hit this tire wall and you don't take out anybody else. More probable will be happen is you will barely have control of your car. You'll miss this tire wall and you'll go right through here, and you're just going to go sailing through the corner and hopefully not taking out somebody else that is further up down the track. That's the risk you run if you really send it in to Shell Oil. And that's the only way you can make a pass, is if you send it through and then brake later than your opponent. You run the risk of dumping a tire out in the dirt and you're gone. So just keep that in mind in terms of risk. Last lap heroics, okay, I can see where that's coming. Early on in the race, like lap 2 or lap 3, don't do it, because you're going to end up being a bowling ball, and you're going to Valtteri Bottas at, what was it, Hungaroring a few years ago, and you'll just end up taking out 3 or 4 cars that are going through the corner. So just be careful there. I'm not saying it can't be done. In fact, it's one of the best places to pass because it's such a heavy braking zone. But you have to be millimeter precise through island to be able to make it work. Coming into Britain's, and Britain's is tough to pass. There's only one line through the chicane. If you're too wide through there, all you're doing is inviting cars dooring each other, and somebody pushing somebody else into the tire wall at the apex, and they don't give. So pretty much single file through here. This is not the one to do it. Focus on getting a really good run coming through the corner. Get a good run down this straightaway, and then this can be a passing zone. But it runs the same problem. If you are alongside your opponent, you're taking away the inside, you can get squeezed into the tire wall because you're taking it so shallow. So you just have to be really, really careful here. If I had my choice, if I was going to pass into Hislop, I'd want to be the outside car because there's more room to carry more speed around, and then you've got the inside for the second one. So, but the chicanes are really tricky. This next corner, Knickerbrook, is not a passing zone. There's just no braking zone to make it a passing zone. Instead, really focus on getting a really good run coming out of Knickerbrook, and all the way up into Druids, because Druids can be a passing zone. So if you get a good run coming up the hill, come through here, you can get the car over here on the right side and take away the inside for the entry into Druids. And this can be a decent passing zone if you're brave. It requires both cars to really know what's going on, but it can be done. And there's a lot of people that don't take Druids correctly. They brake too early for it. And if you're following a car and see how they're driving and you're noticing that they're going too slow into Druids or whatever, there's been times where I've completely cleared somebody before the brake zone for Druids, because they come around this corner and they start like tickling the brake, or they get off the brakes and kind of coast in, and you're just, hammering it and you don't brake down to here. Yeah. In those kind of situations, you can be past your opponent before you even hit the brakes. So that can work. And then the final corner is actually one of the better passing zones on the track because it's such a heavy braking area. You can get alongside your opponent. It's a slow corner. It's a heavy braking corner. So you can try to go for the outbrake on the inside, take away the inside, overslow the car, get it to where it needs to be, and there's nowhere for the outside car to go. So the final corner is probably one of the better passing zones on the track. But in general, all the passing zones around here are, if you're making a pass offline, you're losing at least half a second on the field, if not more. So just be careful. The best place to pass at Oulton Park is in pit lane. So look for areas where you can save fuel. It's going to be a parade. Cars are just going to get in a line, kind of like at Long Beach, and you're kind of just going to be driving in a line, I have a feeling. If that's the case, look for opportunities to save fuel, or look for an opportunity to pit early. If you are in a line of 5-6 cars and you can be faster than them, but there's no way you just can't pass or can't reliably make a safe pass, know when that pit window opens. When's the first lap that I can pit? Pit on that first lap that you can pit, that you can fill the car up and go back out there and go to the end. That will take you out of the traffic. That'll probably put you out by yourself, and then you can run your pace. And then when everybody else pits and they're all stuck in traffic running slower, when they come out, you will be 5 seconds, 10 seconds down the road away from them because you ran free of traffic, they ran in traffic, and you got out of it. Alternate strategy. So that's the best way to pass at tracks like Oulton Park is through the pit stop. All right. Any other questions? Comments, concerns?
Hey Chris, I was just curious how you manage brake bias on this track. Do you turn it up or down throughout the race, or is it set and you keep it there through the entire race, or what's the best strategy there?
Yeah, brake bias is a great question. It, I'll be a lawyer for a second. It depends. So when the car is heavy on fuel, there's going to be a brake bias that serves that setup. The fuel tank in the 911 is in the front, is in the frunk. And so as the car burns fuel off, the front end of the car is going to get lighter and lighter. What that means is that there's less weight over the front tires. That means there's less grip over the front tires. So what we can do is we can offset that change in balance over the course of the stint by moving the brake bias to the rear of the car to kind of maintain the original brake balance. So as you're driving, and as I drive 911s, I tend to sometimes just do 1 or 2 clicks to the rear to offset that loss of grip on the front. But
I'm fairly new to that. So when you say rear, it would be a negative number as you're moving it. Negative would be to the rear. Is that right?
Correct. The number will be going down. Now, obviously, if you started in the positives, it's going to be a smaller number. If you started in the negatives on the dash, the number will grow, but there'll be a negative sign in front of it, right? So, but in general, a lower number means more brake bias to the rear. A higher number is brake bias to the front. Adding brake bias to the rear of the car is going to have the effect that as you are on the brakes, you are adding rotation. So more rearward brake bias is giving you rotation on corner entry. If you are struggling with keeping the rear end in check on corner entry under trail braking, then you want to add brake bias to the front to make the platform more stable. If you are understeering a lot on corner entry and you can't seem to get the car to turn into the corner, then moving the brake bias to the rear can assist with that. Now, of course, this is like, you don't want to use that for car setup, right? You want to set the car up for a balance that makes you most comfortable. But this is like throughout the stint, as you're driving and as the tires are wearing, as the track is changing, as the fuel is burning off, the balance of the car is going to change. Brake bias is the tool you can use to try to keep that original setup feel as the variables are changing. So that's kind of the rule of thumb. But there's been plenty of times in this car that I don't touch the brake bias throughout the whole stint. Even as the fuel burns off the front, with the tire wear and the track conditions, I haven't felt the need to move the brake bias at all. So it's up to the user on how you want to do it. The other thing I will say is brake bias will have more of an effect the heavier you use the brakes. So if you're using the brakes really heavy and you're trail braking really heavy into the corner, brake bias is going to have more effect for you than somebody that brakes earlier and lighter, because they're not using the brakes as much. Brake bias has no effect on the balance of the car if you're not touching the brakes. So just keep that in mind. But great question. Any other questions? Setup, otherwise? Going once.
Maybe just one last
go ahead.
comment.
Go ahead.
The frames per second I notice on this track swing wildly. Have you noticed that as well? I just watching your monitor, you were as high as in the 60s and then you dropped in the 40s. Is it something with the graphics on this track or what? I
think what happens is this track kind of doubles back over itself a couple times. So like when you come out of the hairpin and you're coming down that long back straight, you can see like the first 4 corners going the other way. And so that's a lot of stuff for the renderer to render. And so that is going, anytime the software has to render a bunch of things out there, especially other cars and other corners, it's going to struggle. But tracks where, it doesn't double back on itself like that, it doesn't have to render all those corners and all that that detail, and so that's why the frame rate tends to stay a little higher. If you're having struggle with it, I would change your draw, your cars, the amount of cars that your sim is drawing. That's done in the settings. I wonder if I can do it through here. So if I go to settings, if I go to display, no, graphics, and then I go to, yeah, car. So you go to graphics, your car detail, and then down here it says other cars detail, which is hilarious that it's under your car detail. Oh no, okay, so I see how they did it. I haven't looked at this in a while. So other car detail. This is telling you draw cars. And then if you hover over this, there's a little tooltip on the right that tells you what the setting does. And basically what you can do is you can say only draw 40 cars, only draw 20 cars. You can limit the amount of cars that are actually being rendered at any given time. So it's only rendering the closest 40 cars to you or the closest 20 cars to you, because you don't need to see who's on the other side of the track. That's just performance loss. So only render the ones closest to you will help keep a more stable frames.
Don't change the max car value though.
Yeah. Yeah, don't change the max car value. Keep that at 63 or whatever it is. Because
That's a good,
You need
good
to have
explanation.
all your
Thank you.
telemetry.
Yeah, that's a good explanation. Thank you for that. That's very helpful.
yeah, no problem. And then you can also start tweaking other things. I don't know if I would say Google it. Like if you're struggling with settings within iRacing, just type in a Google like settings optimization iRacing, and there's been a lot of people that have written lots of stuff, or if you like in a video forum, have made YouTube videos on what every little setting does and what you can turn down to still keep high-end graphics but take off the load off your system. So any other questions? All right, well, if not, I will bid you guys adieu and goodbye. Good luck this week. If you have any other questions that come up, just reach out to me on Discord. I'll be happy to answer them. There will be a prelude tonight in practices, so I recommend go try what you learned here today, if anything, and get some laps out here. Oulton Park really rewards somebody that puts in some time and just learns the track. There's so many blind corners that you just need to feel the track. And if you get it and run, put your time in and just run and run and run, you will instinctively start to learn where the track goes. It becomes less scary, and you start carrying more speed because you know what to expect. So practice is very, very important always, but really important here at Oulton. But with that, I am going to stop the recording. Thanks for watching in TV Land. We'll be back in a couple weeks for the next track walk. See you then.